Welkom iedereen bij Bitcoin Live. Vandaag op de zaterdag. No, I'm just kidding. We'll do this in English, but today with me is a Dutch guest, Digibyte Commerce. Welcome everybody to Saturday. With me is a good friend, and wait, I'm all confused by doing it in Dutch, but can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Feels a bit weird because we just had our first in real life talk, and we're both Dutch, so it feels really unnatural to talk in English all of a sudden after the first Dutch impression. So don't blame us for trying.
No, but it's fun. Like I said, that's before the show started. We don't talk very often in Dutch, so it's really fun to have a fellow Dutchman on the show. I always wanted to put some Dutch in the show, so this is like my first time doing that. Or at least, we did it like 4 years ago when we started, but back then no Dutch people were interested in crypto, it seems. So welcome on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Leroy Garrett. I've been around in the Digibyte community for quite some time. Always doing stuff in the community in the background, writing up exchanges, volunteer work, always low profile. I think since a couple of years, not so low profile anymore, pretty prominent. But originally, I'm a software developer by profession. I've been doing it for over 20 years at this point, even longer if you count the hobby years. I've always had a big background in e-commerce. I think it was when I was 15 or 16. So over 20 years ago at this point, when I first started making websites and web shops. So that's when the big money came in. So I was sold right away. And ever since, I've been making a lot of web shops. I've been involved in some of the fairly known Dutch ones that are still using my code to this day.
Wow.
So I've always been dragged into e-commerce one way or the other. Even the places I worked at were pretty much involved with e-commerce all the way. Put two and two together, and the idea of Digibyte Commerce came up. I think it was 2006 and 2017 first, when I first came up with the idea. I think I shared some of the old logos I made back then. I think back then I call it my Digibyte shop or something. A very, very corny shopping cart logo. Ever since last year or so, in spite of being a software developer, I never was involved in blockchain technology much. I use it more for trading and those kind of things. I think ever since a year or so, there was another community member that introduced me to a library, which showed me that it really wasn't hard to get into.
Yeah.
That's when it all started. That's when I finally got some time to work on something like Digibyte Commerce.
And why did you choose Digibyte over all the other, blockchains? For example,
I think Digibyte has been one of the cryptos I've been in for the longest. It's definitely been a long hold because, in terms of price action, Digibyte is performing pretty poorly overall. But in terms of the technicals, the technical foundation is very solid. It's a Bitcoin fork. It's more decentralized in a way. It has 5 mining algorithms. It's speedy. It's cheaper. I think when it comes to Bitcoin is more like a big stock nowadays. It's a store of value, and we all love it. We all have it probably, but it's really not suited for what it aimed to be back in the days, and that is a replacement or a parallel economy where people can pay using a peer-to-peer method. We all know how expensive Bitcoin has become and how slow it has become. And that's when projects like Digibyte kick in because they're so much cheaper and faster. And Digibyte has 15-second block times. Typically, a transaction comes in much quicker than those 15 seconds. That's what I decided to use as a foundation. It's perfectly suitable as a merchant payment mechanism.
Yeah, it's much cheaper. So let's talk about your company, Digibyte Commerce. It looks really cool. I got to know it via, like it usually happens, by the way. But I haven't used it. But can you tell us a little bit about how it works and what you hope to achieve and how big it is and, basically all the ins and outs?
Yeah, so Digibyte Commerce is basically a marketplace, like Amazon, like eBay, like the Dutch marktplaats that we all know.
Yeah.
but it's just completely Digibyte oriented. So when you list a product, when you put up a product, you don't put up a dollar price, you put up a Digibyte price. So everything is in flat Digibyte. There's no dollar price or dollar courses or dollar conversion involved.
Nice.
So you list stuff with Digibyte, and consumers can pay stuff with Digibyte in an automated fashion. It's been possible for quite some years, but it's been hard. I mean, there's so-called payment providers, parties like payments that you can integrate in your web shop.
Yeah.
That assumes you already have an operational web shop platform. Stuff like WooCommerce, stuff like Magento. And typically that either involves setting up your web shop by yourself, which is pretty technical. It's not something every random normie can do. And it's also expensive. These parties, they charge you for transaction costs, they charge you for withdrawal costs. There's a bunch of fees involved. So I wanted to make both that process more streamlined and sexy for common people, for normal people with no technical experience to set up their own web shop whatsoever.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And do many people make use of it, or is it? I mean, I imagine within the Digibyte community, it's pretty popular, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty disappointing so far. I mean, we launched with an MVP last month. So what we see now is people are setting up shop, they're putting in products, they're putting up pages. So I'm really looking forward to the first big users advertising their shops. And in the meantime, the product is still pretty bare bones. I think I originally promised an MVP late last year, because I think that transparency and giving people a solid roadmap is pretty important in this space, in this ecosystem. I mean, blockchain is fundamentally transparent because it's an open ledger in a sense. So I try to be transparent, as much as transparent about everything as possible. So yeah, we launched with an MVP last month. I think it was 3rd of April. So we've been up and running for 1.5 months now. So now it's a matter of getting as much people as possible on board.
And that's of course, the challenge in crypto, getting people on board. The competition in crypto is killing. I think getting your head above the water is really hard on all areas, right? It's not just what you do, but also even what we do. It's like there's so much competition out there. So what are sort of your best strategies to get noticed, and what can other people do within the community, and then also people maybe outside of the community who are interested? How can they sort of help raise your profile?
Yeah, the mantra we commonly use is to use it is to prove it. So when we get people on board, people that just transfer or make a transaction, they're immediately sold because it's fast, it's cheap. So yeah, that's a no-brainer. So we just need to get people to use it as much as possible. So if you are a merchant, if you have merchandise to sell, whatever it is, products, goods, services even, put up a shop and enable payments for Digibyte. All you need is a Digibyte wallet to get paid with, and that's pretty much all.
And some Digibyte.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, I made a tutorial video last month. I think it's almost 10 minutes long, which showcases how easy it is to set up a shop in the first place. You register an account, you set up, you create a shop, and you put up your products, and that's it.
Shall we play a little bit of it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The first thing we need to do is sign up for an account. I've already opened dgbcommerce.com. We can either click the sign up button in the middle or in the top bar. In the form that appears when we click sign up, our desired username, our email address, and our last name are required. Once done, by clicking the blue sign up button, an email with an activation link will be sent to the specified email address. After clicking the activation link in the email we've just received from DGB Commerce, we will need to configure a password. Once we've done that, our account is ready to use, and we can log in using the password we just created. After logging in, we will arrive at the merchant dashboard. This dashboard will show some valuable information as soon as our shop is up and running, such as a chart with sales and a list of most popular products. Since we are now logged in as a merchant, the top bar now shows some other tabs. First, we will create our shop by clicking Configuration, then Shops. On the right, click the blue Create New Shop button.
Hey freelancer, op zoek naar een nieuwe klus? Met meer...
That's commercials. I should do a YouTube Premium, but I don't want to get blackmailed into it. So
I'll never get premium.
no. Yeah, I've been struggling because I'm a huge YouTube user, but I also hate them at the same time. So yeah, I feel the same way. So anyway, people go watch the video. We'll also link it down below, and it's of course also on your website. Yeah, I recommend every Digibyte user who has something to sell to set up shop at your place. It's like you see, it's very easy to do, and Digibyte, once you use it, it's very easy to use and fast and cheap and secure. And well, how private is it? I think it's pretty private too, right? Yeah. Anyway, I love Digibyte, but what else should they do?
Yeah, what else we're going to do? So under the hood, Digibyte is in essence a Bitcoin fork. So the technical fundamentals are pretty much the same as with most other Bitcoin forks. So another approach we've been pretty open about from the beginning is to expand into other cryptocurrencies. So the technology we use in the backend, we run a Digibyte node, we communicate with it through the web application, and it's pretty much the same for all the other Bitcoin forks, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Vertcoin, Monero, you name it. So the next steps in terms of marketing are to expand into other currencies and also target those communities as well. Which is funny because last week I stumbled upon Monero shop on Twitter.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to...
But yeah. I tried it out, and basically, and I mean, of course, it's because Monero is fundamentally a privacy aimed coin. I tried it out, and I could put products in my shopping cart, and but as soon as I went to checkout, I was prompted to just contact the merchant manually to buy my stuff. And that's a process I want to make sexier with DGB Commerce. I mean, people can just go to a merchant shop, they put stuff in the shopping cart, they check out, and they get a QR code and a wallet address to which they send the money to, the Digibyte in this case, and we're done. And of course, the whole shipping and the whole logistics it's all on the merchant's end, just like with a normal web shop. But I want to make the whole payment process, the checkout process, more streamlined. And I think in terms of Digibyte, we did a pretty good job with that so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Cake Wallet is, of course, one of the most famous wallets of Monero. And yeah, we also love Monero here in privacy. Have you also looked into Decred?
Not yet.
Yeah, because that's sort of a close cousin, I think, of Digibyte. I'm a proud holder of both of them, or all three of them, I should say. I think that's a really good idea to sort of branch out. And do you also think about branching out to even more projects to make your commerce fully interoperable with sort of all the blockchains, or is that something you aspire to? Or
and eventually, I mean, it's hard to choose. There's so many projects that are similar to Digibyte or Decred or Pivx or Dogecoin for that matter. What is becoming a point of attention is the economical part, because of course running an application like this requires me to use a VPS. It requires me to run my own node. So at the moment I'm making an inventory of what specs the node software of all the other currencies need, and that's mostly in terms of RAM, disk space, that kind of stuff, because running a node from your personal computer or from your garage, in that regard, it's essentially free. I mean, especially if you have solar panels like me, I don't really pay for my electricity much. So in essence, it's completely free for me to run my own node for multiple crypto projects. In terms of a VPS, it's a different story, because for a VPS, you need to buy additional RAM memory, you need to buy additional disk space, and that stuff's typically very expensive.
True.
And that's the biggest issue we have right now. I mean, we've been up and running for just 1.5 months. But in the meantime, the expenses keep racking up.
Oh, okay. I thought you existed much longer. So it's actually you started quite recently then.
No, I think I started development in July last year.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's going. I think then the adoption is going pretty fast on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple handfuls of people that have been testing everything every time you release something. I mean, ever since we started, I've been pretty transparent about the whole development process. I mean, the source code's completely out in the open. So people can actually look what happens under the hood. And whenever we did a big push to the production environment, there were some people that were testing right away. And they have given me great feedback so far. I mean, there's a couple of pretty big parties that are waiting in line for me to do some changes and some adaptations to the platform in order for them to use it. So all in all, I'm getting great feedback from the community, but also from people outside of the community, which is great.
We also got some people in the comments. I see Jose Trejo, who's using some Dutch here. And what's the wallet address to use? Say for future use, something with Digi asset capability, or is Ledger also okay? Someone else.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much every wallet that supports Digibyte, and from reliable parties. That is, I mean, Coinomi is pretty good apparently. I used to have Binance, but Binance stopped operation in the Netherlands. But of course, I think the best is always to use a Digibyte Core, which is what I use. So you have everything stored on your own computer. The downside is you need to sync the entire blockchain, which takes a day or two if you're unlucky.
True. It depends on your connection and your computer, of course. And for the people in the comment section, if you have any questions or if you want to participate in the discussion, just throw them in there. The more, the merrier. But in the meantime, I do have another question for you. You sort of already touched upon it, getting, payments. How are sort of the regular payment systems? I think about Ideal in Holland, but you got many others. How do they look at your e-commerce setup? Are they happy about it, or do you have any interaction with them, or do they give you a hard time? Or
yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Dutch Ideal. I don't know if I know there's a German and Belgium equivalent. There's Bankcontact in Belgium. And I forgot the name of the German one, but yeah, pretty much it's an app that all the major banks in the Netherlands have supported. So in every Dutch web shop where you order something, you can pay with Ideal. And Ideal is pretty much you scan a QR code from your bank account app, and you can pay. And it was kind of the inspiration I used to set up Digibyte Commerce for the checkout process, because it works. Everyone uses it, and it's the same for cash apps. I mean, for a cash app, I use it weekly almost. Every time I go out with friends, we go to a restaurant, we have some beers. We usually I'm usually the sugar daddy. I usually pay and then I just use the cash app to send a message in a WhatsApp channel for people to pay. And all they need to do is click a link or scan a QR code, and they're ready to go. And I want to bring that kind of stuff, that kind of utility to Digibyte and crypto as a whole more. Because, I mean, we've been in crypto, some of us have been in crypto for over 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think the big problem with crypto is it still feels like it targets a specific niche of very tech-savvy people. Most of the crypto users and people trading with crypto especially, and especially technical analysts, traders, those are commonly very technical people.
Can I ask you a question? Because you're Dutch, of course, and like you said, you also use Ideal. I also use Ideal. Like the word, it's pretty ideal. But if you sort of compare Digibyte and what it can offer to Ideal, what would be sort of the benefits for Digibyte over Ideal?
I mean, of course, Ideal is you pay with regular money with fiat. Mm-hmm. And you're dependent on the banks. And in the end, I think as a merchant, if you want to implement Ideal in your web shop, either way, you're always reliant on a payment provider, which can get pretty costly. I mean, I think everyone who has a little bit of web development has implemented Ideal one way or the other before. Usually that happens with payment providers such as Mali, such as Klarna, those kind of parties. And I think in the end, it always costs money just to set up, just to run it. And I think what Digibyte and blockchain as a whole offers is it can be entirely free, and it's entirely decentralized on top of it. There's no bank that can shut you down. There's no third party that can shut you down for whatever reason.
And of course, the network itself is also sort of robust. And,
the network itself, the network itself is run by volunteers that have nodes all over the world.
Yep.
So it's not like everything goes through one big server owned by one big company that's putting all the things.
Yeah, because that was sort of what I was curious about, because IDEO always says like it's private, it's secure, but basically it does have a big back door, right? I mean, it's private and secure to other peer-to-peer users, but it's not private and secure to the banking government system that's behind it.
I mean, pure crypto is essentially and fundamentally peer-to-peer. So
yeah,
you transfer it from wallet A to wallet B, and that's it.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So, what else do you want to highlight about Digibyte Commerce that's important for people to know?
Yeah, I think we just set up we just launched the MVP 1.5 months ago. So obviously we're still far from done. We've gotten lots of feedback. There's lots of features still to be made. There's a bunch of few parties waiting for me to implement some stuff. So yeah, in the meantime, if people have things that's keeping them from using a platform like that, I'm all ears. Keep the feedback coming.
And that's one of the nice things about the Digibyte community. They have a lot of very active and passionate users who also have a lot of know-how and hands-on experience. They're not. My experience with Digibyte users is that they're not even traders per se, right? They're actually most of them are users or developers.
There's a lot of decentralization advocates in there. There's a lot of very smart technical people in there for sure. Yeah.
And do you think that's also why it's being held back, or if you want to put on your tinfoil hat? I mean, why is Digibyte lacking compared to? Yesterday I was in a space and somebody was I won't name names, but somebody was sort of complaining that you don't have sort of the similar run-ups in price that you see in other projects, which are more VC, of course.
I think was that Master of Leadership space on X?
No, it was another space, but it's a common complaint, of course.
It's a common theme in Digibyte for sure, and I've actually wrote a whole essay in Telegram today about it. There's a lot of people in the Digibyte community that believe it's being suppressed. I don't really share that belief for very obvious reasons. I mean, it's like I said earlier, to run a node, to run a Digibyte node, it costs money in the end. And it's a problem I'm struggling with now. I mean, I'm just a very small party, but it's the same thing for exchanges. If an exchange wants to implement Digibyte, it will have to run a node, and it will have to get sufficient sufficient volume to work with fees to get rid of those expenses. And that's actually the problem I'm struggling with right now. I mean, I'm making the expenses every month. At the moment, it costs me 132 euros just to run the VPS, mainly because of the big RAM memory usage. And I think that's why a lot of parties are reluctant to use that kind of software. I mean, it's a big liability to have to rely on core software or node software for that matter.
So you think it's mostly or all a practical issue, actually?
It's probably economically driven, but I think with decentralization, it's cool and all, but the downside is there's no formal party that can help you if you have issues or if you need support. It's basically use at your own risk. So you use software from the internet. There's no party that's obligated to help you with downtime, with bugs, with features or whatever. I mean, I've been working in the corporate world for almost 20 years at this point, and there's a reason parties like SAP, the big software vendors, they're so big in the enterprise and the corporate world. And it's not because the software is so great, because the software just sucks, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
But it's because there's an ocean of consultants and companies that work with it and offer support on it. And I think it's the same with a lot of crypto projects. I mean, if you want an exchange to use the core software to implement your currency, you'll need to entice them somehow.
Yeah, that
makes it worth it for them, and it needs to make them money in the end. And I think it mostly comes down to money for them, for the exchanges. I mean, different banks at this point, so.
Yeah, that's the incentive system, of course. Somebody also asked, do you think it's possible to add a swap to your platform so people could use any crypto? I think you already sort of touched upon it, but
Yeah, it won't really be a swap that we use that we know of in the typical sense, because I don't work with wallets that people can send money to on the platform, and so there will be no swapping involved. But yeah, other cryptocurrencies will definitely be supported in the future. It's just hard to shop in the ocean of available options.
Yeah, yeah. So what is your future outlook? Because you set up shop. It's easy to use. You got a big, lively community who's willing to engage, and I suspect also set up shop on your website. But there's still some obstacles along the way. So, what is sort of your outlook for your shop in the, let's say like 5 years time? Where do you see it go? Do you think it will blow up, or do you think there will be many more obstacles and maybe regulatory issues, or how do you sort of see the future?
Well, I hope it blows up at some point. So no, I think it's just an experiment at the moment, because I've been flirting with the idea to set it up for a couple of years, and I think since a year or two there were people that were actively almost nagging me to the point, hey, why don't you try to make something like that? And I was hesitant, I was busy, I had all kinds of things running back at home. So yeah, this is just a very early phase, and there's so many things to do. I can do a lot in the marketing regard. I can do a lot in the functional regard, on the utility regard. Being a developer at heart, of course, my preference is to keep expanding the platform itself at first, which is what I'll be doing for the coming while. Because if you compare the platform as it is now to big established e-commerce platforms such as Magento, such as WooCommerce, it's very bare bones. So people will need to be able to run the shops on them. And one of the big feedback, one of the big things we've gotten a lot through feedback is we've been pretty open since the beginning that this platform will be entirely Digibyte focused. But I think it's still very scary for some people to dip their toes into a parallel economy.
Yep.
So imagine if you're selling a T-shirt for $30. I mean, if you put up a Digibyte price, you have to put up a Digibyte price. There's no conversions involved.
Yeah.
And of course, whenever Digibyte becomes worth more or the value decreases, you'll be missing money, possibly. To be missing out.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues there, right? I mean, especially also in Digibyte, but also in Bitcoin, right? Most of them are either hodlers or speculators, and both groups don't really help your business, right?
No, and of course, crypto is always volatile, so it'll always remain that way. So yeah, even though the vision with the platform was originally to use another common mantra, one is one Digibyte is one Digibyte, so completely cut off from fiat. But yeah, I do understand there's a couple of parties that say, nah, it's a bit too scary. I actually want to put my products in a dollar price or a euro price or whatever.
Yeah.
So
also as a unit of account, right? I mean, just to do the calculations.
That's another thing. I mean, for every piece of feedback we've gotten, I have to make a comparison. I mean, is it easy to implement? Is it a lot of work? Does it require me to use any additional services? And to actually do real-time money conversions, I have to use some external API, such as CoinMarketCaps or CoinGecko's or Binance's API, which in turn also costs more money if you do enough requests with it. So.
And do you also think something else that might help for people in the Digibyte community or outside of it who are listening, who also want to sort of create a business or start a business? What kind of sort of advice would you give them from your own experience? What they should and shouldn't do to get started in crypto? Digibyte or any other.
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to do is to get people and especially consumers to use apps that support Digibyte payments. And once you get to use it, is to prove it. I mean, once you've transacted with it, you'll be sold, you'll be hooked. And I think crypto has a bit of a stigma still for normies, for common people. People still see it as something very scary, very technical, very complex.
Full of scammers.
Which is true in a sense. So I think stuff like native wallets, stuff like custodial wallets are very important. And once people have access to good wallets or brokers or exchanges that offer good wallets, I mean, there's a few good ones. I mean, Cake Wallet is seemingly a very good one, but it doesn't support Digibyte yet. I think there's a community member that's trying to gather that capacity for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think once that whole process becomes more sexier for people, for normal people, not even technical people, it's a no-brainer for them to use it.
So, and another question I have, which sort of related, since you're also from Holland, what is your feeling with the Dutch people when it comes to crypto? Are they? I have my own opinion, but what's your takeaway from? What kind of people are they when it comes to crypto, and how many are interested in it, and for what reason?
I mean, I work in IT, so most of my coworkers, they are either trading or using crypto one way or the other. And outside of that, you really don't hear much about it very often. And the funny thing is, as soon as as we're in a bull market, which we're possibly still in, everyone suddenly starts talking about it at the gym, at the school. When I pick up my kids, there's parents at school talking about crypto, Bitcoin, all of a sudden. And that's typically the moment, when you need to sell your assets. Because that's when stuff collapses in a couple of days.
So okay, just to touch upon that for a little bit, where do you think we are in the bull run? Are we in the bull run?
Definitely. Just not for the altcoin market yet.
Mm-hmm. But you think also probably that the parabolic phase still has to start.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think we're still early in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. So 2024 will be a very interesting year in that regard. And how do you see regulation? Because in America you got all kinds of issues. You had like a big day yesterday where they repealed Gary Gensler's law. I forgot the exact term of the law, but that was a big gain for crypto. Of course, Biden can still sort of veto it, and he might. I wouldn't be surprised. But in Europe, we have MiCA. So what's your take on MiCA?
Yeah, it's really odd. I mean, of course, in terms of regulation, if you have a truly decentralized project, they can regulate whatever they want, but they can't stop us in a sense. But it'll kill adoption for sure if they overregulate it. I think there's a lot of companies, even government, looking into blockchain technology as a technology. I mean, even where I work at the Central Bureau of Statistics in the Netherlands. We are also looking into large language models and crypto, but more in the blockchain technology kind of sense. But I think, my take is in terms of regulation, the main establishment will always try to kill the actual decentralized projects because it's a parallel economy in a sense. They try to break down the system, which are the banks, the big exchanges, those kind of things. So they will try to break it down for sure. Yeah,
and that's of course very difficult, right? Because Europe is very centralized and very law driven, not common law driven, but sort of the Napoleonic universal law driven. And my take is the same as yours in that regard. So do you see like more hopeful signs from America, where states have more influence on what's happening, and because of the sort of common law that they have there, it's more easier to steer it in the right direction from sort of the grassroots level than in Europe?
I think America as a whole is more crypto friendly than Europe. That's for sure. And Europe is notorious for regulating the ever-loving fuck out of everything. I've had the same thing with e-commerce. I think it was about 10 years ago where we had the European VAT rates. Don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
If you buy a product in the Netherlands, you either have to pay 9% or 21% VAT.
Yeah.
But at one point there was a regulatory change that required you as a merchant to charge the VAT rates applicable to the country of the consumer.
Yeah.
It was a technological disaster. I think I managed about 30 web shops at that point, some fairly big ones, and suddenly they all had to conform to new regulations that got pushed down in a matter of months.
Yeah.
It was a very tough time for me, and I think in the end, I don't think that will take very much longer. I think especially European regulations will eventually do the same with crypto. And on a technological level, I mean, if you want to kill crypto, it's not really possible. You have to pull the switch to the internet in a sense.
Yeah.
In worst case scenario, we just switch to a different port number and we're good to go.
Yeah. I always say
it'll hurt adoption for sure.
And that's, I think, also because I've heard it a couple of times, sort of, crypto is unstoppable, and it is unstoppable. And that's why I always say, like, it's for them, it's kind of useless to fight it. I mean, they can slow it down, of course, and then they can tarnish it and, say all kinds of bad things with it and associate it with scams and et cetera. But the only way for them to really stop it is to control us, right? That is the only real way to sort of get a hold on crypto. It's basically getting a hold on us. So how do you see that? I mean, you're from the Netherlands, and when I sort of look at the politics here, and also, we just talked about MiCA, and for Americans, MiCA seems sometimes like very positive, like something like that Europe just embraced crypto and that they're that everything is possible here. But I see MiCA more negative, like, when you sort of see the details and everything that's not allowed and sort of criminalized or penalized or mitigated. But also sort of when you see the trajectory of Dutch politics or European politics, it's very worrisome when I look at it. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you want to sort of speak on it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't really feel like crypto is a big topic in politics here in the first place. And typically the people that do, and you also see this in the US, I mean, we all know Gary Gensler, we all will know Miss Yellen. And yeah, it's the sad thing is it's usually the people that know nothing about it that have to call the shots in the end.
Yeah,
I think that's a very realistic scenario, that we might get killed by regulation in the end, by said people. And the thing is, they can never kill crypto as a whole. I mean, we're very technical people, we're a very technical community, so we'll always find a way to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will definitely kill the sentiment for new adoption by common people. I mean, even if I ask my wife about crypto, if I even mention it, she knows I've been dealing with it for over a decade at this point. But she still sees it as this scam, and that people use it to buy drugs and that kind of stuff. I mean, you can, but you also can with regular money, regular fiat. So crypto is no different in that regard. But it's used for so much other things.
And it's bad for the environment, right? That's also a really big one in Holland. Well, it's actually the opposite, right? I mean, when you really look into it, it's actually promoting and making green energy finally profitable instead of driving subsidies and corruption.
Yeah, I mean, in the blockchain is fundamentally transparent. I mean, every transaction can be traced back to where it came from on chain, and that's another subject that I often touch on. I mean. Think of parties like charities or parties like NGOs. I mean, parties that we all donate to en masse, sometimes even indirectly. We in the Netherlands we have the Vriendenloterij, the friend lottery, translated. I mean, I think most of their profits go into NGOs, and nobody knows what happens with the money, where the money comes from, where the money goes into. And I think crypto would be the ideal solution for parties to actually be transparent about what they're doing with the money.
Isn't that also funny that they often say that they want transparency for all of us, so that you exactly know who's doing what, and to fight criminality and stuff. And then, but they want privacy, right? So the government.
Exactly. We have another thing we have going on is I live near we have the migrant crisis going on in Europe and the Netherlands, and I myself live pretty close to a very big asylum seeker center. And we have this big entity in the Netherlands, the Centraal Opvang Asielzoekers, the COAM. And there's literally billions of euros going around in that industry. And they keep getting money somehow. They keep doing stuff with that money, but nobody knows exactly what. I mean, they release some bookkeeping stuff in a report every 2-3 years or so. But it's all fictional numbers. Nobody really knows what happened with the money they put under a specific post.
There's a lot of money sloshing around the system. Also in the refugee sector like what we're talking about now, and that's also now happening in America in a huge way, with the border crisis, and there's absolutely no transparency in that regard.
No, and I think those parties will always be reluctant to use something like blockchain technology in the first place because they don't want to be transparent.
Yeah, they want us to use it, and
and we're all very good people, and we want to be transparent about what we do, and if people get paid or not. But I think we're in that sense we're not the target audience of blockchain technology in the first place, which is sad.
And I do also think because that's something else that I've been sort of thinking about with privacy, right? Because it's a little bit of sort of all or nothing. I knew Zcash has sort of the ability to switch it on and off, the privacy toggle, but basically, aren't we sort of on this juncture where we have to make a choice, right? Either everything is transparent for everybody, or everything is private for everybody. Isn't that sort of the juncture where we are?
I think that's where niche projects like Monero come in. I mean, I think Monero is completely privacy driven, and it can make the transactions anonymous in a sense, which Digibyte can't. I mean, we have Dandelion. Monero has Dandelion ++, which is a Dandelion on steroids. And in a sense, Digibyte is not completely focused on privacy. You can only obfuscate a transaction by using Dandelion to split a transaction into a lot of segments, but in the end, you can always trace it back. But yeah, I think that's what will set different crypto projects apart. I mean, I like having Monero around as a privacy-driven project because let's face it, people will want to buy drugs, to name an extreme example. Yeah. And I'm not saying drugs are bad. I mean, opinions differ on that, but in some countries, it's still illegal to buy a blunt.
Yeah.
And that's when crypto can come in, anonymous crypto can come in. I mean, it enables people to buy stuff they normally can't in a relatively safe manner.
But there is sort of this difficulty for governments and central banks. I mean, when you sort of look at it from their perspective, which I don't often do, but they do have like a difficult time, of course, with crypto, because you can't really stop it. Like you say, some cryptos are private, but then, as soon as you sort of tolerate it, everybody will start using it, even people you wouldn't want, to them to use it. So it's sort of like it's a difficult path for them, a very difficult tightrope for them to walk if they're able at all, right? I mean, how would you?
That's Monero as the most extreme example when you talk in terms of privacy. But if you look at Digibyte, and that's especially in the e-commerce niche that I'm focusing on, I think transparency is very important on that regard.
Yeah.
And look at this weekend. We have a holiday coming up in the Netherlands. We have an extra long weekend. Monday is a national holiday. And typically, if you some banks nowadays do it real time, but what used to be a thing in the Netherlands for very long is if you have a different bank than I use and I transfer money to you on Friday evening, especially on a long weekend such as this, where we have the Monday as a national holiday, you receive your money by Tuesday.
Yeah,
which is ludicrous. I mean, you'd have to wait 3 days for your money to arrive.
Yeah, in Holland.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of crypto. I mean, you transfer money from A to B. You can look up the transaction. You can see if it arrived, if it has been confirmed, if it has been redeemed, and that's about it. You can't get any more transparent than that. And especially when you deal with micropayments or e-commerce, transparency is a very big thing.
And well, you sort of made me think about something which is also related. In the UK, you have this unbanked program. I think Nigel Farage started it, which I think is wonderful. And in America, you also hear continuously people getting blocked from their banks for no apparent reason.
Wrong thing.
But it's also happening in Holland, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, typically normal people really won't be bothered much by it. But yeah, I'm sometimes I dig into alt-right rabbit holes politically, and I follow people like Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson, very known figure, and I've seen people get their bank accounts frozen for wrongthink. That's ludicrous. I mean, it's insane that because you use your bank account for everything. I mean, I pay my mortgage with my bank account. I pay my utilities with the bank account. So if my bank would decide to shut down my bank account tomorrow, I'd have a big problem. I'd get in debt. I'm too small. I'm just a small guy in the internet with a hairy back, so they won't target me likely. But the option is always there, and it's scary in a sense.
And do you know many people who, sort of got blocked, or, stories about people who got blocked in Holland?
Not in Holland, not that I know of out of the back of my head.
Yeah,
there's parties like PayPal that have done it.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't operate just in Holland.
Well, anyway, in UK it's quite prevalent, and often it's also politically motivated, it seems. So this is the website from Nigel Farage. I popped up here, so take a look at it. I'll also link it down below. But he started sort of a campaign to sort of also inventorize how much it happens, right? Because many people are often unaware that other people are also suffering from the same thing. And apparently it's very widespread in the UK, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's also happening on a much broader scale in Holland that we might not even be aware of, right? That people for unclear reasons got their account. You sometimes have it. You hear these stories when you make a transaction of a certain size to a certain person that in order to sort of protect you, your account gets closed and you get a message from the bank about it, and that that's also a good feature, of course.
Yeah, it happened to me before, actually. I mean, we've all bought a car before. I usually buy a second hand. I mean, I drive a shitty 20-year-old car usually, but even a second hand can cost 6,000-7,000 euros sometimes. And you can't really withdraw that money without getting questions anymore. It's like when you make a big withdrawal like that, the first challenge is finding an office where you can make said withdrawal in the first place, because all the banks are shutting down their store locations, and in spite of that, the recurring costs for just having an account are increasing. I actually got a mail from my SNS bank last month that they will once again be raising the costs for just having an account. And I mean, I have my own account, we have a joint account, my wife has an account, the account for the kids are free until a certain age. But yeah, at this point, I'm paying 12 euros a month just to have an account. And it used to be much worse when I still had my official company. I used to have a software development company for 7 years. And when you have a business account, I think I paid about 40 euros a month. And luckily, it was because I sent invoices on an annual basis, because the transaction costs were insane. I think I paid like 25 cents per transaction.
Wow.
on top of 25 euros just to have the account. And I mean, they don't really do anything for you. The only thing a bank does for you, which is a good thing. I mean, if in the unlikely probability that I get scammed, that I get phished, or someone robs me and makes me withdraw money at an ATM, there's a high probability that my bank will reimburse me.
That's the upside or the positive.
That's the upside for it. But I mean, if you look at the last 10 years, they've gotten so expensive, and all the stores are shutting down. And it's like, what are they even for nowadays?
Yeah, and then also talking about banking, right? You got the BTFP after sort of the banking crisis last year, and that sort of stopped in, what was it, March 17th of this year. So you see sort of the banking crisis is sort of still building up in the background. I think Michael Burry just did a post about it yesterday or today, this one. So there's also a huge amount of risk in the banking system, right? So even if you have a bank account, and even if you pay the fees that they charge, right, it might happen that, in the next, crisis, your bank might be insolvent, or you get a haircut of some kind. So what's your take there as sort of doing commerce or e-commerce?
Yeah, it's always a danger. I mean, we are protected in the Netherlands, especially by laws. I mean, I think it's up to 100,000 euros that you're eligible to, should your bank just decide, yo, I'm out, I'm quitting. But yeah, it's always a risk where you're pretty much leaving all of your money with a third party that can do whatever they want with it. And oftentimes they even wonder, do they even have the money in the first place? Because I mean, you have to make an actual appointment to withdraw your own money sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of friction there, right? They don't want you to get your money out of the system.
Yeah, exactly. And they just want you to keep their money on there so they can do stuff with it, invest it in
Yeah. Like Harari says, there's a lot of trust in the banking system.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of dependability. I mean, I wouldn't be able to live without my bank account at the moment.
Yeah.
I can't bring a bag of money to my mortgage broker every month. There's not much parties where I can pay with crypto, to name an example. There's still no parallel alternative.
And that's also something that's much more easier to sort of set up or do in America, right? Where you still have way more freedom in that regard than for example, in Europe, where everything, and especially Holland, where everything is hyper regulated, right? You can't, go to hutje in the huis, as we say, and set up shop there. You really have to comply with everything that they say, right? There's not really an alternative.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I mean, if you use crypto at first, and especially if you use a privacy-driven crypto, who says how many Monero or Bitcoin that I have? They won't know of it. So
that sort of opens the door to a parallel economy, and that's of course something that they really fear.
But I mean, I'll gladly spend crypto for real life purchases, everyday purchases.
Yeah. And that's actually also what everybody should do. I mean, even with Bitcoin, right? You should sort of start using it as money. Even though I also understand the hodlers and seeing it as a pension fund. But what kind of pension do we have in the future if we don't change the system?
I'm wondering if we have a pension in 30 years at all.
That's what I mean, right?
I pay for my retirement and pension every month. I mean, it's semi-automatic here in the Netherlands, but
you're just throwing it away.
Yeah, if I'll see any of that money, and I think it's still 32 years left at this point.
Yeah.
I doubt I'm going to see any of that.
Yeah. People don't realize it, but they're basically throwing money away. Most likely.
I think it's always good to have an alternative. Should the fiat system fail, in a sense.
And then, talking a little bit about politics, I'm not sure if you want to go there, but I'm sort of watching what's happening in America, and of course, this is one of the biggest elections years in the world, right? I think in 60 plus countries you have elections at the same time. But of course, what happens in America is most important for everybody everywhere. So you got like three big candidates. You got of course Trump, you got Biden, and you got who did I mention? Trump, Biden, and Kennedy. Yeah. So, how do you see the election year going there? Do you follow it? Do you think? What's your take? And just what's your take?
Yeah, I tend to stay away from politics, but we talked about it prior to this session.
Yeah.
For some reason, and especially in the context of people getting shadow banned on X, I said to a lot of people, don't mention anything political in nature, or you'll get shadow banned. Whether it's
I'm already, so it's okay.
I tend to stay away from politics, but somehow I always end up replying to political dipshits, as I name them. But I think, in a sense, I consider myself a centrist, but I lean a bit more to the right. I mean, I'm in a literal sense, I'm very very open and liberal, but in political canvases, I'm more right-leaning. Yeah. So in that sense, I hope Trump becomes the next president of the United States, especially if you consider that Trump has recently expressed being in favor of Bitcoin and cryptos, which would be a good thing for us, of course.
Yeah, my preference would be Kennedy, but it's kind of like a long shot. Sorry, my pun, but but Trump would be my second favorite. Yeah. And I do think it will be sort of very important what happens there, and I do hope that everybody, even though I totally understand that people are sick of politics and that they don't want to vote and that they think their vote is lost. And I mean, what's happening in Holland right now is really.
Yeah, we just had a coalition form a couple of days ago, and people have named it the most extreme right coalition ever. Nazis, extreme right, the whole shebang. but regardless, in the context of crypto, I mean, often I go through the agendas and the things these parties want to do, but I don't really get the impression that crypto is big on a political level in the Netherlands.
No,
It
and
is big
yeah.
level, sure.
And then also, for example, when you look at then sort of the big right parties, the PVV, but when you sort of really look at their program, they're actually quite socialist in many regards. They're only sort of right on cultural issues, and that's it, right? Otherwise, they're pretty like the SP, like which is actually a real socialist party.
Yeah, they're only right on when it comes to immigration and stuff. So which is a big
that's a big issue.
In the Dutch society, of course, especially coming from someone like me who lives near a very big asylum seeker center.
Yeah,
I also manage the neighborhood watch, by the way, with about 300 people. So we have an app group, we have a community, and it's mind-boggling how often people get their car broken in, their home broken in, bikes stolen, that kind of stuff. So obviously the place, the city I live in is very much in favor of PVV.
Yeah.
The right party, which wants to cut down on immigration.
And I heard that the prime minister might be Plasterk, Ronald Plasterk.
Yeah.
Somebody who, the people who are watching is like, what the hell are they talking about? But he's
he
like
was Upstart a couple of years ago. Remember?
Yeah.
Because he's also very much in favor of a privacy killing regulation.
Yeah, and
so I really don't hope he becomes the prime minister of the Netherlands. To be honest, I mean, he has a very good take on some issues living in society, but in terms of privacy, he's a terrible candidate.
And it's so weird that they pick him, right, out of all people.
Right? Sorry again. Yeah.
It's so weird that they picked him out of all people. I mean, we don't know yet if he.
Yeah, it was just to form the coalition, but yeah, I never expected him to become the prime minister. But I'm not.
It's really strange. Yeah, and then like you said, like because I'm also like you, more right centrist. That's why I also prefer Kennedy. But one of the things that has happened like in the last years is that what is called right used to be centrist. And what is basically, I think you and me are both sort of classical liberals in a sense. I really like John Stuart Mill and, sort of the real classical liberals like Adam Smith and David Ricardo. And but those are now considered sort of extreme right? So
yeah. I lost count of how many times I've been called a Nazi on Twitter. So.
Yeah. If you're like for the free market, you're sort of like a delusional.
I try to be perfectly. I think it was yesterday even when someone called me a racist out of the blue. I was like, okay.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Yeah.
Wow.
No, it wasn't a post where it was a bit in the context of racial tensions, and I replied to something in the sense of, I mean, I've been to Madagascar in 2016, I believe, 2017 was it? I think it was 16. Madagascar was a very poor country. And what you'll see if you go to Madagascar as a white male, as a white person, I mean, there's two big cities in Madagascar, Antananarivo and another one I forgot the name of. But the rest of the country is very poor. The majority of people are piss poor. They're farmers. Their life expectancy is very low. And what you'll see when you go to Madagascar as a white person, you'll get people approach you that call you Vaza, which is a bit of a slur, which means, hey, white man, I'm entitled to get stuff from you.
Yeah.
So come. I mean, I couldn't even take a leak in a bush somewhere, or there will be people jumping out of the bush to ask me for stuff, for free stuff, just because I'm white. When I mentioned that in our reply yesterday, there was someone calling me a racist out of the blue. I was like, okay, you've obviously never been out of your basement. Obviously never been to Madagascar before, but whatever. Yeah. I think that's most political discussion nowadays. It boils down to you're either extreme left or extreme right.
Yeah, the polarization. Yeah. And we should actually try to reach each other in the middle again. And by actually making everything sort of discussable and people airing their grievances and their observations and I think also what's happening in Africa is basically the result of the fiat system, right? So in a sense you can't even blame them for thinking that way or us for thinking our way, right? It's sort of the result of the fiat system blowing up and taking everybody down the drain. right? So it's really sad.
It's also a matter. It's being able to agree to disagree with people. I mean,
Yeah.
some of my good friends, they're raging libtards, as they jokingly call themselves. But I get along with them just fine. I mean, certain subjects get saucy when we talk about them, and we'll never agree on them. But we're still good friends, so because we can openly talk about it in a regular session, and I think especially online on X and other communities. It's so polarized. It's so hostile all of the time.
Yeah, well, I think X is my impression of X. Maybe it's my circle that's a little bit more positive, but my impression is not that bad of X. And thank God for X, because otherwise.
It's gotten better over the last couple of years for sure.
Yeah.
And sites like Reddit took a turn for the worse. Reddit used to be better, but I hate that place nowadays. It is
sort of scary how dependent we are on social media. So I'm really happy that you also see more and more decentralized takes on social media, even though it's sort of very hard to get it right. I'm sort of what Jack does with Blue Sky, and you got Noster, of course, and you got some other TreeSpeak is one that we also air on if we upload it. But they're still cumbersome, hard to use, not many people there. Sometimes you have the same issues as on centralized exchanges, and they are also partly centralized. So it's sort of very difficult transition to get loose from these the grip from these very centralized parties, right? And the influence that they have on politics and on culture.
I mean, on a political level, these platforms shift all the time. I mean, look at Twitter. Twitter used to be very, very left-leaning, very liberal-leaning, but ever since Elon Musk took over, of course, it went into a completely other direction. Things change over time too.
Yeah, that's true. But basically, what you would want is a neutral platform. That would be nice, but that's probably too hard.
Centralized one, preferably.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else that we should touch upon, or that we should highlight before we wrap it up?
Not that I know of at the moment. Maybe other people have some questions left.
I think everybody is nodding in agreement in the chat.
Awesome.
So I'll say everybody follow Digibyte Commerce. I'll show your profile pic again. I got it here. That's this link over here, and of course your website, which I'll also link down below in the video section on YouTube. But especially Twitter, of course, is the place to be when it comes to crypto. So follow Digibyte Commerce on Twitter. Start opening your shop if you want to, do commerce, or if you want to sell or buy anything. Especially if you want to sell something, link up to Digibyte Commerce and keep giving good feedback. And keep spending also the Digibyte, right? That's not unimportant, or your Bitcoin or your Monero or whatever it is. Because we have to sort of start creating this parallel economy at some level.
Yep.
Okay, and with that,
5 minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna round up. Thank you for being on, Leroy.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do this again at some time.
Yeah, sure.
Take care.
All right. You too.